If the organization is the body, the processes are the blood that's pumping through your body. So process management looks after what keeps an organization alive, the blood that is pumping through your body.
So, Professor Micheal Roseman is there with us. Thank you so much, Professor Roseman. Today you are there on BPM Legends. It is a great pleasure and honor for us to have you today with us and hear you about your experience, your thoughts on the business process management. So, Professor Micheal Roseman is very well known, respected professional among the BPM practitioners. For all those viewers who are watching the recording of this discussion, who are new to business process management, I take this opportunity and an honor to introduce Professor Roseman with you. When I talk about Roseman, one thing that always comes in my mind is the quote which has been said by industry analyst Mr. Neil Ward-Dutton. He said, if you have a chance to attend an event that he is speaking at, you should immediately book your seat. You should not leave that opportunity. And I completely align to that thought. Dr. Micheal Roseman is a director of the Center for Future Enterprise and professor for Innovation Systems, Queensland University of Technology, Australia. He has been the chief investigator of a number of international research initiatives to equip leaders with the capability to understand and shape their future. His research has been funded by international industry leaders such as Accenture, PwC, Infosys, SAP, and many more organizations. He is instrumental in the establishment of one of the world's first Masters in Business Process Management program. That's fantastic, Professor Roseman. As an author of more than 300 referred papers and books available in 5 languages. His work has, among others, led to globally adopted BPM maturity model, process modeling quality standard, process innovation patterns, and a rapid process redesign method, which is known as NESTT. His handbook on business process management is one of the most comprehensive books on BPM, and I recommend everyone who are interested in a business process management to build more of their knowledge and learning and skills. This is a highly recommended book to start with. Thank you so much, Professor Roseman. It is a great pleasure once again. Before we start, I would like to start with a very basic question that we all have built our own concept. I know business process management practitioners, they have defined BPM based on their skills, experience, just like me. But I would like to hear from you, what is business process management as per you?
So, first of all, let me start by saying the pleasure is completely on my side. I'm totally delighted and I appreciate the opportunity. I've been fortunate enough to be in India 3 times. I've got fond memories. So wow. As I highlighted, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. And what is business process management? Of course, is a big question, and big questions often deserve simple answers. See, organizations need management. They have asset management to look after the resources. They have human resource management to look after the human resources, their brains and arms that keep the organization alive. They have management of IP to look after the intellectual property, or data management to look after data. Now, you could argue process management is the management of how an organization works. If the organization is the body, the processes are the blood that is pumping through your body. So process management looks after what keeps an organization alive, the blood that is pumping through your body. Now, of course, process management has massively increased in sophistication, but without processes, there would be no blood, and without blood and blood pumping, there would be no life and no existence.
Professor Roseman, I read a lot about your articles and in your book and your work in terms of the innovations. And these days, we are hearing a lot in terms of innovation, designing, thinking, and so what is the role of business process management in innovation? Is there any correlationship, or these are 2 separate streams?
I think you could argue there are 2 main facets of process management. One is, going back to the analogy, to keep the blood pumping. Mm-hmm. You want that purchase orders are processed, that factories are running, that people are recruited. and staff members are paid. And we have an issue if this doesn't work or this doesn't work effectively. Now, the second component of process change, of management, process management, is change management. Asking yourself, what can I do? Like the human body who tries to work out, where could I become stronger? Where could I unlock new capabilities? A process manager will, based on the fact that blood is pumping, try to work out how else could I improve this process? And this work becomes so fascinating because we give you, as a process manager, more and more opportunities. You could work with digital technologies, you could work with new business models. You've got customers who have a high level of digital literacy. So I tend to argue that the process world used to be problem rich. We studied lean management, Six Sigma, and we were obsessed with pain points. And this is the bread and butter business of a process professional. Now, over the last 5 to 10 years, our world has become opportunity rich. No longer it's sufficient to ask ourselves what's broken, but we have to ask ourselves what's possible. And that's a territory of process management that is dedicated to innovation, as opposed to process management that is dedicated to maybe reactive improvement.
Okay, fantastic. So you talked about the digitization is one of the aspects which is coming up, and a lot of automation, digitization that we are talking about in the industry these days. And business process management in parallel is running towards it. So where do you see the role of business process management, the fitment of business process management in automation, in the digitization? Is it digitization is a part of BPM, or it is a parallel stream, or it is dependent? How do you see business process management with digitization journey?
So my personal view is that digitization serves process management. So digitization is not a means to an end. Organizations don't deploy artificial intelligence, robots, biomanufacturing for the sake of it. They do it so they become better. They become more cost effective. They open a new revenue channel. They become more flexible. They give the customer what they want. The challenge is, I think sometimes companies feel digital is the end and not a means to an end. When we have a strong process view, it allows us to put digital opportunities into the context of what matters to an organization. And in our own experiences working with organizations across all sectors, we found it always most useful when the conversation doesn't stop at understanding what is AI, machine learning, or blockchain, but to truly understand where in the landscape of my processes, for example, does a technology like blockchain truly make a difference? So to highlight again, digitalization should serve process management and not the other way around.
Yeah. Okay. So I have seen many organizations, even when I'm reading about it, they are more interested about looking at the solutions. So in fact, that's why in few of the cases, some of the research report I have seen, BPM is defined or perceived by the practitioners as automation tool. So, and then it is a little more complicated because there are many concepts which says low code BPM solutions. What is this? Digitization is supported, or it can be leveraged if you have the right process management system in the organization. So if an organization is planning for a digital journey in their organization, a digital transformation, how the business process management fits into this? Is it a starting point, or what do they need to take care of it?
That's a fascinating question, Amit. And the question is always, do we start with today and try to work out which of our processes should be automated in a different way? And this seems to be the mainstream of thinking. So we look at processes that maybe are highly transactional, processes where, let's say, robots could mimic human behavior, like claims handling. And then once we understood which process fits the bill, we take advanced process management systems, robotic process automation, and target exactly these processes and how we can improve them. A second school of thought tries to work out how else could I work? We start with the future, not with today. And once we understood, well, maybe a process could look like this, independent of where we are today. Let's say banks who would say we evacuate the production of a financial product. We just become a broker of products. we become an orchestrator of a process, and we will source whatever banking product we find, and we move from production to orchestration. Would be a massive digital transformation, but it would start with an entire new process that describes more of a marketplace, a platform, as opposed to yet another banking process. That, of course, requires imagination, courage, ambition, a visionary leader. And this is why I think it's the exception. We encourage leaders to have a strong sense of ambition, to be storyteller. And what we realized works well also for the organizational energy, when individuals follow your vision. We haven't seen many organizations where excitement was unlocked because automation eliminated a piece of paper or an approval step. That's what we need to do. We have to become more effective. But it truly gets exciting when we use the full potential of digitization. And that goes far beyond incremental improvements of today. So I would say business process management systems, one type of digitization, are fascinating technology. But by all means, use them in a way to create something completely new. If you do nothing else than fine-tuning existing processes, you're undercapitalized. To give you an example from healthcare, we've seen hospitals where digitization meant surgeons are using an iPad and not paper. Now you could say that's a huge success. There's no more paper, there's no more manual error, and everything is digitized. Well, what we've done is we automated current processes.
Correct.
We haven't used, let's say, artificial intelligence to create entire new, maybe predictive or preventative medical services. And so that's the difference between what I would call digitization that automates today, as opposed to digitization that truly designs and gives birth to processes that do not exist today.
Thank you. So, Professor Roseman, a very good thought, and this gives me a click for my next question. We have seen the different companies at different levels. So some are startups, some are quite matured organizations. When we talk about business process management in these organizations, or like the process management, I would say, the majority of these organizations has a statement, or quote the statement as, currently we are more focusing on delivering our solution to the market. And once we get it stabilized, then we will think about the process management. So what do you think this kind of a mindset, can it be any disadvantage to the organization and stability to the organization in the longer run?
I think it's at least in the business literature documented that often process follows products. We create let's say a new banking product, a new insurance product, a new retail product. And once we see demand catching up, then we pay attention and optimize the process. But first of all, let's say we secure demand, we secure revenue. And once revenue is fixed, we try to reduce the cost side by improving our processes. Dell, Amazon, eBay are all examples where process innovation followed product innovation. Dell didn't innovate a computer, Amazon didn't create a book, and Uber didn't create vehicles. But in all cases, intelligent, sophisticated process innovation accelerated existing products. I think it's only now that we see a shift. Let me take Uber as an example. Uber innovated a fascinating mobility process. They were able to move people from A to B. And once Uber understood we have this crowdsourced mobility process that scales up globally, then they ask themselves, what else can I do with this process? And then other products, Uber Eats. In the US, Uber provides services at hospitals for discharging. In Australia, Uber works with Qantas and looks after patients or delivers parcels. So this is now the tipping point when a product follows a process. Uber, Amazon are examples. I wish other organizations, mainstream hospitals, banks, universities, insurance companies would ask themselves, what else can I do with my process capability? What other products could I put through our processes? Because then they would maybe scale up and grow very much like Amazon and Uber have.
Wonderful. Professor Roseman, the companies like Dell, Uber that you have given as an example here, which are very encouraging. Does it also mean that BPM or process management is only limited, or it is applicable for the large organization, not for the small size organization?
Well, process management by its kind of core value proposition makes a lot of sense when a lot of stakeholders, typically in silos, work on one bigger product, producing a car, handling a claim, a patient experience in a large hospital. So you could argue, if this is what process is doing well, then yes, of course, it makes a lot of sense. Going back to the analogy, the blood system of a human being is much more complex than in much smaller animals. Mm-hmm. So you could argue, when I fix this, there's probably also more benefit. Now, for SMEs, 2, 5, 10, maybe 20 employees, you probably don't need advanced process management. Mm-hmm. What you might want to do is offer process as a service. Take Uber as an example. Take Airbnb as an example. Take eBay as an example. When they were small, Wikipedia is still very small. These are small entities when they were starting, and they offered an incredibly sophisticated process and scaled it up. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's not the traditional, I improve my internal process. But what I've done is I create a process that orchestrates stakeholders, providers, vendors, third parties to a large scalable platform or ecosystem. And again, that's maybe different to BPM today as opposed to BPM 20 years ago, when all we saw is the internal process cleanup. Mm-hmm. Designing highly innovative processes that bring different stakeholders together can be incredibly rewarding for very small organizations.
Yeah, wonderful. So this is equally important not only for the large organization but for the small and startup organization. Just focusing on the product to the market will not give them any kind of a scalability, as I'm understanding from you. Of course, the size of the large organization is different than the small, and as you compared with the human body and the small animal's body and the blood moving into that is different. The complexities are different, but it is always required. Like you said, blood is always required in every life. So, but we have seen there are organizations who have been awarded on the various platforms for their process management at one particular point of time. Let's say Nokia is one, right? They were there on the various platforms. Kotak were there, the leading the industries, right? Those organizations have always achieved process management at a maturity level in their organizations. As well as we do have the organizations like Amazon or Uber who are successful even with the change in the environment as well. Like in the COVID, they are very much successful. So what is making a difference in an organization having the process management system? The same, few of the organizations have become successful. Some of the organizations failed to achieve their targets in the future.
That's a very good question. I fear that the problem we had in the process management community was we saw process management as a sort of staged approach. You have a project, you model a process, you find some waste as part of, let's say, lean management, you design a new process, you implement and forget, and maybe come back in 3 years. Now, you can't be a leading athlete, train once, win the Olympic medal, and then hope for the rest of my life, my blood keeps on pumping. It requires ongoing attention. Now, to give an example, when COVID became a pandemic in Australia, on the same day, the CEO of Uber Australia called Petbar, a provider of pet food, and said, we want to partner with you because people are at home, they're in lockdown, they've got pets and they need food. What about if we deliver pet food to those people? Wow. On the day the pandemic occurs, Uber created a new process. So that shows you it's not just a question of tool set and skill set, what we often do in BPM, and we've done in the past, we teach people how to do Lean and Six Sigma, less tool and skill set and more mindset. And mindset is one of those factors that probably in a lot of corporate education, in a lot of BPM textbooks is underexplored. if the day COVID occurs, you see an opportunity to create a new process. That's a sheer evidence of your process-obsessed mindset.
Wonderful. Mindset is really a challenging. I believe this is what I also experience as one of the difficult part. To set is an easiest part comparatively. Professor Roseman, if we would like to hear from you one of your experience of BPM journey. How did you identify an opportunity in an organization that qualifies for the BPM? And how did you take that organization to a BPM journey? What challenges did you see? What value it has generated to the organization? Can I request for any experience of yours to share with us?
Sure. So and I generalize this now. So if you in the audience ask yourself, how do I convince my organization? I think you can press two buttons. You can talk about pain, or you can talk about gain. Now, typical BPM, as I said, talks about pain. So we could identify, let's say, in a call center, what are the elements in a script that I could improve? What are the calls that are unnecessary? And if I eliminate them, I have entire processes disappearing. And when I'm finished, I'm more efficient, I'm faster, or the cost to serve have been reduced. This is probably an argument that a lot of companies have. It's crowded, and you have to be really good to find your compelling argument. The second argument is to argue with gain. I'll give you two examples. One is a large retailer here in Australia. They have 900 supermarkets. And the question was the process of selling bread, the bakery process, how do we improve this? And we didn't ask ourselves, how do I cook quicker, or what bread changes do I need? We asked ourselves, out of those 900 bakers, who's the most outstanding? So instead of the typical BPM approach that goes straight to what is broken, we went straight to what works perfect. And then we studied the best baker. And then we said, well, you 900 bakers never talk to each other. You all have internal best practices. All we did is we brokered internal best practice. And it was labor intensive. We did the night shift. And when we have finished, the organization adopted to a shared understanding of existing best practice. We've done this more recently in an insurance company using process mining. Claims handling, the process took 60 days. We took 40,000 claims. And again, same question, not what is broken, but when does this organization work incredibly fast? They do rapid lodgement, they look at certain elements, they do thin slicing, they zoom into the few criteria that matter more. We copy-pasted this. The Australian Financial Review, our leading economic newspaper in Australia, wrote an article highlighting that the process we used to take 60 days now takes 5 days. Now, you either reduce claims handling time or sell more bread. The mindset was always identical, learn from what works well. And again, I like to highlight, we might be equipped with great tools, but it's our mind that is often misleading. Get your mind behind those pockets of gold and learn from them. Then you don't have to be creative. We have no idea how to sell bread. We have no idea how to be faster when it comes to claims handling. But a large organization had the solution already implemented. We just had to find and copy it.
One of the learning from this example, Professor Roseman, for me is that you cannot grow in an organization, or an organization cannot grow with a negative mindset or finding out the fault and resolving it, but finding out an opportunity, looking at the same problem and finding out the opportunity of it, and then work towards it. Thank you so much.
That's absolutely correct. And if you see companies like you mentioned Nokia, we look at Blockbuster, we look at Kodak. All of these organizations were very good on operational excellence. They were not struggling with workflow, process automation, lean management, or Six Sigma. They're very efficient. They just became non-relevant. And so the challenge with a large chunk of our BPM know-how is we are guided towards streamlining the organization. Operational efficiency is necessary, but not sufficient. And as a process manager, we have to be very careful that we don't see the streamlined, automated process as the final destination. It needs to be a cost-effective, but highly relevant, a high in-demand process. That's the final destination.
All right. So did you see this discussion about business process management and the opportunity happens more at the middle management or more at the senior management? Where do you see more maturity there about business process management?
I would say the opportunity mindset is a very individual conversation. Generation-wise, I often see, of course, a higher levels of digital literacy in the younger generation. A 25-year-old probably understands data science, machine learning, neural networks, and blockchain better than your 60-year-old board member.
Right, that's true.
And this is why we often see new business models, new opportunities for process design from the lower and the mid-management emerging. The kind of those who run an organization, large organization, have grown up in an environment where compliance, operational efficiency mattered. The question, what else could I do, is a question that only gets stimulated when I see what's possible. I take my own university. We try to work out how blockchain could improve our current business processes. Very, very few people would know how to answer this question. But a lot of people could help us to streamline our existing processes.
Okay. That's very interesting to hear about the blockchain concept and process management. Must be very interesting. So do you see any kind of a trait, any kind of some attributes in an organization that can help you to qualify this organization is ready for a discussion for business process management or a journey to start for BPM? Is there any kind of parameters, attributes that you've identified?
So maybe the first question is how much does process matter to the organization? Okay. So if you are in an organization that lives in very creative environments, you're an architect, you're a designer, you might be a post-production house for the movie industry, then large chunks of what you do will be driven around individual talent, flexibility, and the advantages of rigorous process management won't be as strong as if you're a car producer, a call center, or an insurance company. So that's the first triage. When you arrive at an organization where you feel they could benefit from process, then again, like what we discussed, do I see pain or gain? And if you go out to the Ubers and the Amazons, you wouldn't see maybe too much pain, but you continue to see gain. And it's a very different driver to, let's say, going to a large government organization where you would see immediate opportunities to fix pain. So I would say 2 stages. Ask yourself, to what extent in general would this organization benefit from processes? Because processes really describe the way this organization works. And second, try to ask yourself, is the fixing of pain or the capitalizing on gain what will help this organization? And then, of course, you need an individual that thinks like you. Many times we went to organizations and we saw potential, but the organization did not move. Compliance, you might be big, fat, and happy, and you don't see any need for this. You are distracted, or you just simply don't know BPM, and leaders and managers don't like to engage initiatives that they do not understand.
So whenever we talk about business process management with the middle management or with the senior management, one of the questions that always comes up in terms of what is an ROI of this? What do we expect as a value of business process management? How do you measure ROI? How do you define the ROI for business process management?
So it's really important to ask yourself, what would success look like? So it's not about us pushing BPM and explaining what is BPMN or what is RPA or what's a process architecture or process owner. It is really carefully listening. What is the organization trying to achieve? Do you want to double the size of your customer base? Do you want to go from an offline to an online process? You want to globalize? You want to reduce cost to serve? you have a customer satisfaction or an employee engagement problem, only then you can ask yourself, what's the ROI? And the ROI might not always be a monetary return on investment. It could be a reduced incident rate. It could be a reduced, let's say, death rate in the extreme scenario of a hospital. It could be an increased NPS, Net Promoter Score, in a highly competitive customer-facing environment. To be crystal clear on the definition of success and to measure it is something that truly matters. The pity is when you see a lot of process models, they describe what the process is doing, but not what the process tries to achieve. So we always encourage process managers and process designers, every time you model a process, also capture what's the design rationale, what do you try to achieve? And only when you always see what you try to achieve, then you understand what truly is an improvement opportunity. And too many times we improve without being explicit about what we try to achieve. Last comment, we talked about concepts like activity-based costing, advanced ways of capturing costs along a process for a long time. It is only now that they become viable because we've got process mining. Six Sigma is the same. Six Sigma is incredibly data hungry, incredibly expensive to implement. If I have a system that automates the data collection, if I can do process mining, maybe for the very first time now, activity-based costing, Six Sigma actually becomes viable because the act of collecting large-scale data is actually very cost-effective.
So we talked about process mining, we talked about Lean Six Sigma or the data collection. But in an organization, we have seen all these things happen, but these things happen at the department level. The improvement happens at the department level because the data collection happens at the department level. Whereas when we talk about a business process management, we talk about an end-to-end value creation, right? So an organization which is defined and managed into departments from top to bottom, whereas our objective is to measure the ROI or the value in terms of the complete end-to-end cross-functional processes. So do you see any kind of a challenge in the traditional organization structure versus what is expected in business process management? Do you recommend any change into this?
Yeah, again, it's a very good observation, Amit. The challenge, of course, processes are, let's say, counterintuitive. For a long time, I gave you an organization, I gave you an organizational structure, I gave you clear silos and boundaries. And now processes come and they want to go across. That's like saying you're a doctor and you focus on an arm, a leg, the lung, or the heart. And all of a sudden someone comes and introduce you the blood system and say, if you have a blood clot in your heart, well, that's it. And if this nerve is pushed in your spine, then your leg will hurt. So a process is a bit like this. So pain in one area could trigger more pain somewhere else. So we need to build up awareness for this. And very much like when you have a neurological problem, a nerve problem, I will try to find out not why does your leg hurt and looking only at the leg, I look at the entire body. Organizations need to have that sort of mindset. What we typically recommend to overcome this is have someone who owns the end-to-end experience. If nobody owns the process, if nobody comes to voice of the process, we won't go anywhere. So having accountability for the process, the idea of a process owner, I think is fundamental. Otherwise, you end up with a more abstract narrative where we try to talk about a process, but if everybody's incentivized and only looks in their own little backyard, I can't see any fundamental change. Now, establishing process owners who are strong enough, can influence, often without budget and authority, established silos, is a tricky job. We work with an insurance company where process owners were the top talent of the organization. You are a process owner maybe for 1 or 2 years, and often when you demonstrate your impact, you got recruited to even more compelling jobs. So process owner is not what you become because you're the last one standing when they stop playing the music. process ownership is a truly challenging role, but also a very rewarding role.
True. So that's a great insight. So an organization, in terms of measuring the ROI of the business process management, it's a fundamental requirement that they should have the process owners in the organization who owns, who reviews the processes, and can see where is the problem happening, because where it is happening probably generating the problem somewhere else. So someone has to take care of and oversight this entire smooth flow of the blood circulation,
Yes.
as you recommended. When we are talking about having a process management in the organization, whereas the organization is largely focused on scalability, go to the market, bringing new value to the customer, that means a lot of disruptive thinking is what is expected now, what is happening in the organization, most of the organization. Do you see the role of business process management? This is the second question I was asking you about digitization. So I just would like to connect it with the same. Do you see any organization who is planning to have a disruptive solution thinking in the organization? Can business process management help them to achieve any goal, any value out of it?
I think so. And sometimes it's not the process explicitly, but process maybe more implicitly. Let's say if you want to turn your organization that is obsessed with the inside to make it more customer-centric, you could argue a process represents customer interest. So if for the first time I don't look at my job description and org charts, but at the customer journey map, at individuals who portray what the customer goes through, customers follow processes. They don't follow organizational silos, they follow a process. A process is the path an individual customer follows from the initial inquiry to the final delivery and invoice. This is why process thinking and customer orientation go hand in hand. And whether it's shifting towards process focus, well, we shift to process focus because of our customers. And sometimes what we learn is easier to talk about customer orientation than process orientation, because customers are tangible. We understand that customers matter. Processes is often a bit of an abstract term. They're not as tangible. They're not as visible in my day-to-day conversations. So I would say some of the largest organizations who are successful with BPM might not talk about BPM explicitly. Jeff Bezos talks all the time about the importance of customers. He might not talk very often about the importance of processes, but he very much understands that great customer satisfaction is the result of great process performance. So sometimes it's not just what we do, but how we label it that matters. And what I encourage you, you might be obsessed with BPM. That doesn't mean you always have to use BPM as what you will introduce to the organization.
Yep. And you have touched upon a very interesting point of a customer sensitivity, delivering to the customer and thinking from the customer point of view. I think this is one of the shift that I have seen in the industry in past few years, where initially mostly the focus was on insight capabilities, how we are delivering value to the customer. And now the shift is moving towards how customer is perceiving those services, those values that we are delivering. So there is a significant shift has been made in the industry. And being such a senior person in this industry, you must have seen the change in the industry from 90s, when the focus was largely on the standards and compliances, till now when the completely digitization or disruption is there. What do you see? What did you see as a trend, as a change in the industry, and what do you see the change in the future that we can talk about, we can expect about the business process management?
I sometimes think about four main waves. The first one is the focus on resources. 100 years ago, when you had a factory, you want that machines are running, that your stuff shows up, you don't pay them a lot, and you make sure you're very, very busy. And it was a focus on resources. And this is why Henry Ford said, buy whatever car you want, as long as it's black, don't disturb me. Then we saw the focus on processes, and Michael Hammer and others articulated extremely well why internal busyness, resource focus is not enough, and we focused on processes. Now, then we realized, well, processes is still internal navel gazing. It's very much obsessed with the inside. It's a customer that matters. And this is why we now do design thinking. We do not just do internal processes, but customer journey maps, and why we try to work out what is desired and not just cost effective. The fourth, and what I see as a new wave, is when you're smarter than the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So most companies look first to the inside and said, what's broken? Mm-hmm. Then they ask themselves, what is it that the customer wants and how can I satisfy them? The third wave is, and how can I be smarter than a customer? Mm-hmm. I give you an example. We here at QUT, at our own university, we redesign internal processes. So we do RPA for, let's say, enrollment. We do design thinking. We work with our student cohort. We've got customer journey maps and persona. What we now do is try to work out what would be great for those customers, and they don't know this. Example, we're working on an upgradable degree. We consider the idea that we sell a degree like a piece of software with versions. Mm-hmm. None of our students ever said, we wish you have an upgradable degree. But when we float the idea, they like it. So what I would suggest is we move from resources to processes to customers to opportunities. And it's often the very advanced thinker and not your customer who will spot this opportunity. Problems are visible, opportunities are not. So I assume that in the years to come, we will see more and more approaches and methods that will help leaders, not just to see what's broken, but to see what's possible. If I go back to the very first sentence, today you can go to a doctor and he says, Amit, I do an X-ray, a blood test, and I highlight where's something broken. Mm-hmm. In the future, you go to a personal coach and say, hey, in light of your body stature and the legs and arms, you are the perfect rower. Mm-hmm. You don't know this, but I see massive opportunity for you to demonstrate your talent. At the moment, we've got a lot of doctors. We don't have a lot of coaches who unlock entire new possibilities. But I think this is where BPM in the future will be.
Wonderful. This is a very, very useful thought, I would say, Professor Roseman. Thinking about the latent requirement of the customer, something which customer is not aware about it, and thinking before them and build your system and deliver those values. Great thought. Thank you so much. We are almost at the time, and I know that talking to you will never finish. It's always a delight. So more we talk, more we feel we should take more of your time to discuss about it. I would recommend, and definitely it's a thought. Anyone who's watching this, please feel free. You can connect with Professor Roseman on LinkedIn. It will be a privilege to have a person like you and hear from you. Thank you so much, Professor Roseman, for your time. Got a lot of insight, information from your experience, from your examples, such a clarity of thoughts that you have given to us. Thank you so much. Anything that you would like to share your thoughts with the people who are watching this webinar as what they can think about business process management if they are planning to get into this particular profession?
So first of all, I mean, I like to thank you. I had a very enjoyable hour. I appreciate the opportunity. And I really, really value the chance that you provided here. Thank you so much. To everybody who's listening here, if you're a process professional, you have the opportunity to change organizations, lives, and societies. We should not treat this as a mechanical organizational redesign opportunity. Process design invested with intelligence, with ethics, and not just a brutal cost focus, has the potential to make the whole world a better place. And the more we move from cost-effective processes to sustainable processes, the more we move from profit maximization to maximizing the quality of life, the more also we as process professionals have a chance to make this a better place. So I think collectively, we as process professionals are on the critical path to a better planet. So we should also be very much aware this is a great opportunity, but also an obligation. So we need to make sure that our process knowledge is invested into those processes that matter most to all of us.
Thank you so much, Professor Roseman. It is a great pleasure for us. Thank you for giving your time, and
Absolute
wish you a
pleasure.
very nice time. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much.